Hey, good morning, everybody. It is me, Rob Voorhees, Business Development Manager from Exertis, Almo, Pro AV. I am super excited today because we are here with the third episode of EA Power Hour's Mind Your Business segment. One of the reasons why this episode is so important to me is because for those of you who weren't aware, the month of April is World Autism Acceptance Month. You've probably all heard my stories in the past before. I am the very proud father of a daughter who is on the autism spectrum. And this gives me a great opportunity to really blend my love of my career with obviously my love of my family. And before I introduce our extremely special guest today, I want to tell just a really, really quick story. A few years ago, maybe 2.5 years ago, Exertis Almo was, we brought our E4 experience event to the Boston, Massachusetts area. And, you know, typical show goings, I went to one of our panel discussions that I saw on the schedule that was all about diversity, equity, and inclusion, DE&I, if you're familiar with those letters. I'll be totally honest with all of you. I had no idea what I was walking myself into. I'm definitely a people person. I love all people. I respect all people. And I thought that's the panel that I want to sit in on. One of the very first things that I learned at this panel was about the topic of neurodiversity. And that is a word that even as a 40, I guess at the time I was 41, I had never heard that term before, certainly not at work. And one of the first things that one of the panelists had said was about autism. So obviously my ears perked up and I was fixated on this conversation the entire time about what neurodiversity is, what it really encompasses, how autism's related. And, it was, again, very interesting for me to be able to blend what I knew about autism with my daughter and have that happen at a work event. So that was my quick story. But it was also the very first day I met our special guest, Kim Lonas from Exertis Almo. Kim, thank you so much for joining. I feel like this is long overdue of us having a more detailed discussion about this. And while we get started, why don't you tell the listeners and the viewers about what it is you do at Exertis Almo and really how it's all related to our topic today.
Sure. Well, thank you first for having me. I'm excited to talk about my favorite subjects. So for those I haven't met, my name is Kim Lonas. My pronouns are she, her. I'm currently a diversity inclusion program lead for Exertis Almo, and my work focuses on embedding or strategically embedding diversity, equity, and inclusion within our businesses and aiming to impact the around 4,500 employees that we have. My background is started within the business and human resources, recruiting, diversity, equity, inclusion, change management, and I really took an interest in DE&I for a lot of different reasons, and then took different certificate courses to help me have a better understanding. And then I'm trying to cascade that information into our businesses to make a positive impact on our cultures.
I will definitely tell you that, for anybody who hasn't met Kim, that is spot on. And if you do follow her on social media, it seems like every week, Kim, I know that might be a little over dramatic, but seems like every week, not only are you at a different office or different warehouse, but also it seems like a different continent. So, obviously, being under the DCC umbrella with us being Exertis North America, I actually want to start things out that way. Do you see a lot of differences when you are visiting, other offices overseas compared to what, all of us in North America are doing, or are there a lot of similarities between the two?
Traveling to different physical locations really has enhanced my knowledge of what DE&I means, because what it means in North America is very different than, say, what it means in Germany or Sweden or the Nordics in general. And by going and traveling to those locations, I have firsthand knowledge of those cultural experiences and an understanding of their different perspectives. So when I compare those learnings to what we're doing in North America, it is slightly different, and in some countries, very different. But, it's allowed me to have that direct engagement with those diverse groups and to help kind of guide the conversations in how we make a positive impact for our businesses wherever they may be located. So I think from a North America standpoint, it is very different.
I would imagine there's some, purely from a cultural standpoint, but there's got to be, some differences, but ultimately something we can learn from them and something they can learn from us. So, that's what's always interested me about your travels is at first it's kind of like, why the constant need, but then it becomes, well, it's important to see what others are doing to try to see what tips we might be able to pick up on and improve on, certainly. And we're all under one umbrella now anyway, so it's always important to foster that relationship for sure.
Yeah, absolutely. And it's, when you learn from other locations who may be the one thing, we are in a devolved business model, so every business is at a different stage in their DE&I journey, and they call it a journey for a reason. Everybody progresses differently. And there are things that we can learn from different locations, and there are things that they can learn from us in North America. So by connecting all of the businesses, by being present in them, there's a sharing of information and a deeper understanding.
That's great. That's great. And so one of the things, Kim, that you and I have had the fortune of sitting down before an E4 and just chatting about our families and, the subject of DE&I, I'm trying to think the best way of saying this, but it's to me, it's interesting because, again, as I said in my opening segment, I'm a people person. I love all people, and that's the way I approach my life. I feel like the subject alienates a lot of people. I'm using the right terminology here. If it's, it's been in the news, and, being a huge fan of the show Shark Tank, I saw some recent news that came out from Mark Cuban, who's on that show, where, he's talking about DE&I and how it's so important to all the businesses that he's involved in. And not everybody feels that way. And one of the things that, really made me want to talk about the subject and get involved in the subject is, again, because of my daughter. And she, for those that follow me on social media, that my daughter just got accepted to her first job at the summer camp that she goes to. And, it made me as a parent, I was stressed in the beginning because I want my daughter to have equal opportunities. I want her to work hard, obviously, but I know it's important for her to be somewhere that fosters that behavior. And, I don't want to use the term safe space, but I need her to feel comfortable somewhere so she can share. And that's what made Mark Cuban's comments so important for me. My question for you, Kim, is you have the Mark Cubans of the world that see the value in DE&I. Why do you think, from a corporate level, why do you think not everybody agrees? Or why do you think some are late to the adoption of DE&I? Do you think there's something companies could be doing better, in other words? Or is it just they have to go at their own speed?
Yeah, I think it's an interesting question. I think we see more of that in North America than we do in a lot of other places, with the exception of certain underrepresented groups. There's a consistency there. But I think, I'm a mother of 2 adult daughters and a professional woman. And I think fostering change for broader gender, LGBTQ, ethnicity, people with disabilities, representation, that type of representation is really important to me. But that's from my lived experience. I think some of those people who maybe are not on board have a totally different lived experience. And I think it's maybe educating so that they have an understanding of what DE&I practices are. I'm not trying to force anybody to change who they are in any way, but I am trying to create an understanding of where people come from and how we can work together versus, you must embrace DE&I, and DE&I for me is one thing and DE&I for you is something else. For somebody else, it's different. And I think really in order to move the agenda forward, we have to have open dialogues, even if it's not necessarily something that I agree with, but where is that coming from? How do we agree to work together? And unfortunately, there is quite a bit in the States right now, but in North America in general. But the thing is, people are talking about it. So it is helping to raise awareness, not necessarily always in the best light, but people are talking. And hopefully by that continued dialogue, we'll see positive change in the future. That's what I'm hoping for.
So that's a great answer too, because the two things that you said, and of course I'm going to paraphrase here, but the two things that you said that most intrigued me is, one, your version of DE&I is different from mine, and that is 100% true. And I'll go back again in a second and talk about why E4 experience was such a big opportunity for me. But then at the same time, it's, using my experience of hearing neurodiversity and autism tied together, and that piqued my interest. The person sitting next to me at that event might not have cared because they don't live with somebody on the spectrum. It doesn't come up in their day to day and things like that. But then on the second part of that is what you said about not having it be forced, and certainly not getting political on this call. That's not my style, certainly. But I think that's the problem a lot of people face, is they almost rebel when they feel like they're being forced into something. And I think DE&I at least should be the complete opposite of being forced. It should just be this natural progression of caring for other people and not discluding anyone because of a difference and things like that. So I certainly always applaud you for the work that you've done in our conversations, but that really hit home on 2 points there.
Great.
The second, and almost the segue from that, again, I talk about my daughter a lot, and then she, as I said, she just got her first job. And, all of my conversations with her have been, Samantha, what do you look for in an employer? What were you concerned about going into this? Is there something, do you want to tell your hiring manager up front about your autism, which she actually did. And I was really impressed with her comfort level and her bravery in doing that. But my question for you, Kim, is on the flip side of that, what can companies be doing, or what should they be doing to make the appeal? We've talked at E4s before about, are you for example, working with local autism foundations in your area to hire people on the spectrum, or other neurodiverse candidates, but something like that. What, from a corporate standpoint, should companies be doing to make their businesses, their offices, their storefronts more optimal for both employees and customers who might be neurodiverse?
That's a great question. And there are a lot of things that businesses can do. There are different organizations, regional, national, that companies can partner with. I think the first thing is creating understanding and before you, I'm a big believer in that, before you just start layering in different aspects of diversity within your business, you need to educate your team so that when you do hire somebody, there's that inclusion automatically because there's understanding and there's not fear in not understanding the differences. So I think training on neurodiversity awareness is really important. And what does inclusivity mean? I think when we look at, and I know we've talked about autism, I think it's 85% of adults with autism are either underemployed or unemployed. And why is that? I think one of the things is sensory work environments or lack of them. And so we could create quiet workspaces for sensory reduction. So if somebody has autism and maybe it affects them from, hearing, is there a place that we can designate, or noise canceling headphones? I know we've talked about that in the past. Are there, instead of making assumptions, the other thing that we can do is have conversations. Like if, one person with neurodiversity doesn't mean, or understanding of one person with neurodiversity doesn't mean you're going to understand all, because there are so many different aspects of neurodiversity, from autism, dyslexia, attention deficit disorder, and I could go on. There's a long list. So really sitting down and having a two-way communication about what that individual needs and what is feasible within the business. And then once you learn that, sharing it with their coworkers to say, let's create a supportive environment. And I think those are the biggest things that businesses can do, is starting a conversation for understanding. And then there are, of course, once you get past that and understanding like flexible work schedules and what works best for that person, there are assistive technologies available. And not every person's going to need them, but also being aware of what's out there.
Yeah, that's a perfect response, because, as you're talking, I'm thinking about, all these different types of situations that, not just with my daughter, but even myself. And I'll be the first to say, I've never been formally diagnosed with, dyslexia, ADD, autism, or anything like that. But there's definitely been some situations where, for an example, being at a trade show when, you have loud music and displays in your face and lighting flashing, where sometimes you're kind of, okay, I need to step back from this and take myself out of that. And it's, I always find myself, texting my wife saying, oh my goodness, Samantha would hate it if she was here right now because of all that overstimulation. And even sometimes with myself, you remove yourself from those situations so it doesn't become a negative or have a negative impact on my work. And that, again, is why I was so concerned about her entering the job site. And, whether it be E4 or your work or any of the other, opportunities that Exertis Almo's worked on, it really can be as simple as just talking about it and having that dialogue. Because I will tell you, as an employee of Exertis Almo and having worked here for, a little over 7 years now, I have zero apprehension about ever speaking up and saying something to any of my, bosses or executive team, if I need anything, because I know my company is at the forefront of DE&I and what we're trying to do to make it, comfortable for everybody. And I think that you can't underline that enough, that just by talking about it and making it, a topic of conversation constantly year round, it makes the employees feel more comfortable bringing it up if they do need special accommodations. So again, applaud Exertis Almo, applaud your work on everything you guys are doing, because it really does make a difference. And it's something so simple. It's not, you don't have to immediately, remodel your offices. You don't have to immediately spend millions on new equipment. You don't have to take these grand steps. Sometimes it is just as simple as having that conversation and, opening that dialogue stream to figure out what's needed and what's not. And it's all a learning experience, and that's how we build awareness around it.
Yeah. And, you make a good point. It doesn't have to be incredibly expensive. It's just understanding. And sometimes people are not necessarily diagnosed with any one different neurodiversity. Neurodiversity is the viewpoint that the brain differences are normal. And I think every single person thinks slightly different than the next. And again, because their lived experience has an impact on them, neurodivergent people, their experience, how they interact and how they interpret the world, could be as easy as having a conversation and them not being aware that there's already a resource available to them. Yeah. So it's just, again, conversing and, looking at what might be an easy fix for somebody. Maybe they're in a really crowded, noisy part of the building when they are in office. Maybe there's a corner space that they could be moved into where it's less disruptive for them. And again, it doesn't necessarily have to be a diagnosed condition. It could just be, I need support, and just asking that question.
And it really could be something as simple as that, because and you've mentioned, a quiet corner, a quiet office, noise canceling headphones, and, and certainly, much like my daughter, I mean, there are moments at home, when I have downtime where I do just want to put my headphones on, listen to music, maybe watch something on my laptop. But not everybody on the spectrum is like that. And I think one of the misconceptions when you hear, a quiet space, no, we are not talking about a dark, room in the office with beanbag chairs and I mean, this is an actual office, but, one of the things that my daughter Sam said to me, because I'm constantly trying to educate myself, is I'll say, Sam, you're fine walking into Citizens Bank Park. We're big Phillies fans. We love going to games. How come that doesn't bother you? Because I thought, as your parent, I thought you hated large crowds. And she goes, no, it's not the large crowds that bother me. It's the sudden noises. She goes, if I'm walking into a baseball park, I know it's going to be noisy. But if my favorite player hits a home run and the crowd immediately starts clapping real loud or screaming, she said that bothers me because I wasn't prepared for it. So for her, the suddenness of the noise or the sudden flashing lights, that bothers her. But if she's just in a controlled environment with a lot of people talking, it doesn't trigger her as much. So it could be something just, companies making themselves aware of that. And as you suggested, no, you don't need this dark office, but maybe don't put somebody like my daughter directly in the middle of the office in the center cubicle where she's the focus of everything happening, because that could trigger.
Right.
And that's, as a parent and now as an employee, that's something that I've learned about. Not just neurodiversity and autism, but specifically is it's never one size fits all. And it is constantly, what triggers one person might not trigger another. And that's why you just have to keep that dialogue open, as we've said, to make sure that you're being respectful and you understand, what accommodations might need to be met. Because the one thing that I haven't said, but I cannot emphasize enough with everybody listening, when you make somebody, and I'm speaking specifically autism spectrum disorder, if you make that person feel comfortable, it is absolutely remarkable what happens. And I get emotional. I get choked up talking about it because, my daughter just celebrated her 16th birthday, and lo and behold, we're planning these small ideas for her. And she said, no, Mom and Dad, I want to have a big party. I want to have that, that grand hall with the flowing dress. And we looked at her and said, that's not really her. That's, we thought of her so reserved. And it was remarkable seeing how well she handled the loud music and the lights. And then to my surprise, she gets up in the middle of the party and does a ceremony called 16 Candles, where not only does she light 16 candles in front of everybody, but she says a speech about 16 individual people. So she got up and spoke about me, spoke about her mom, her sister, and so on and so forth. And I sat there and was just in amazement, like this. And that's what makes me realize, like, she did that because she was around her family and friends. There wasn't anything overstimulating her at the time. And she became this expert public speaker all of a sudden, which, I mean, looking at her on a day-to-day basis as her dad, I'm thinking she's very quiet and reserved. So when I take that situation and look at my professional life, it's absolutely amazing what neurodiverse people do when they're comfortable. And the key is, as companies, continue doing what, the Kims of the world do, and what Exertis Almo's been doing, and even the Mark Cubans, even though I've never met him. But by the way, Mark, if you're listening, I'm a huge fan. Just continue that dialogue, because those are the people that are making the biggest difference right now. I'm going to get off my soapbox for a second because I am getting emotional, but yeah, it's absolutely incredible. And that's why something as simple as like the Boston E4s and the conversations you and I have had and all the work you're doing and flying overseas, it is making a difference. And that's, I'm excited to see, good, bad, or indifferent, DE&I has been kind of at the forefront of conversations, and I'm just hoping for more positivity around the term in the future than the negative side. But
well, thank you for sharing the story about your daughter. As you were talking about that, I was thinking about several of our businesses have hired individuals who are either neurodiverse or specifically have autism. And in my travels, I've seen where one individual can have such a profound impact on a business, a really positive, mutually positive impact. For example, we have one business where I went in and they have somebody in operations who's been with them for a couple of years now. And when they came in, they had these conversations about, what would work best for that individual. And they brought that person in, and it not only had a positive impact on the individual working there, but the people around that individual, because they've learned to embrace that difference. They've become comfortable and they've learned from the experience. So, it really can be, when you look at neurodiversity or autism specifically on your team, it really can be truly remarkable when you embrace it and move forward within your business.
That's a perfect statement right there. I might get that made into a t-shirt, but it's, I think that really encompasses just the conversation as a whole. And again, I don't want to put you on the spot, but I applaud the work that you're doing. And it's been, the funny thing about the story that I tell about Boston is that, it was actually a joke, that I wound up walking into that room. I didn't know the panel was going on. And I don't know if you even remember, but you were a little under the weather at that show when you first got there.
Yeah.
So I walked into that room thinking I was going to be on the panel. And I didn't even know what DE&I was at the time, neurodiversity. So I walked in just thinking, okay, I'll be a team player and this is an Exertis Almo event and here we go. And that moment changed the last, I think we're going on 3 years now, and you and I have been on panels since that time at future E4s, and it's become a passion. It's, because getting to spread that word. So I applaud you for that. And I've kind of had a front row seat to learn from you and learn under you about, the the topic and how to conduct yourself and kind of approach it. So I do appreciate that greatly.
Oh, thank you. And, and I know you also did the neurodiversity spotlight as well prior to the before event. And, I think education is so critically important to DE&I, and, the importance of educating others on how to embrace diverse viewpoints, on how to embrace diverse ways of thinking. And each step we take towards that goal of creating a more inclusive environment, it's like ripples, right? It creates a lasting impact. So one single voice like yours, like mine, can really be a powerful agent for change within the business.
I hope so. And I'm sure you would probably agree with me on this, but I got to tell you, the number of people that come up to me at E4s, InfoComms, message me on social media, on LinkedIn and what have you, that also have children on the spectrum, or maybe they're on the spectrum. I love those conversations. I can talk all day about those conversations, and it's hilarious in the best way possible to sit with another parent or another person who's familiar with the topic and just share stories back and forth. And, certainly for privacy, I won't share anything here, but I'll just tell you, it's just so enlightening to say, well, my child doesn't like this, but she does like this. Well, my child likes this, but and it's just, we bounce ideas, and it makes me a better parent because I can come back and think, okay, maybe I've been handling this with Samantha in the wrong way. And so for anybody out there who's had that conversation with me, please continue to do so because it means the world. So I greatly appreciate that.
Rob, you make a really good point. I think a lot of times we're in business mode and we go down our path of what we need to accomplish. And even people we deal with in our day-to-day lives, imagine if you never put out into the world what your personal lived experience was. Those people wouldn't talk to you. They wouldn't have that safe place to go to. You are that safe place for them, right? And
I try to, yeah.
And I have experience within the industry where people were living a similar experience and could have benefited from having somebody to talk to, but they didn't know because they didn't put it out there. And years went by, and all of a sudden you have this person share, and then, gosh, I have that same lived experience. Let's talk and let's learn from each other. And that's really what it's all about. That's where the magic starts happening, when people start being their true selves and sharing of themselves.
Yes. That's actually been a buzzword for me for at least the last year now. I feel like it constantly comes up, and that's authenticity. I wear my emotions on my sleeve. I know a lot of other people that do the same, and especially with my work, I'm trying to go, and this isn't a catchphrase, I'm trying to go beyond the numbers. I think it's so easy, especially in the world of sales and business development and working in a corporate atmosphere. It's so easy to just look at, are we up? Are we down? What's going on with the business? There's so much more that goes beyond that. And if I can be a listening board for that, or talk about it at the same time while I'm doing my job, obviously, that excites me. It's always, and again, like I said about E4, being able to blend my personal life with my job, that's like the perfect combination for me. And it combines two passions at once. So it's, something I'll always continue doing no matter what.
Absolutely. Same.
But at this point, I have taken enough of your time, but I am going to put you on the spot for one final segment that I like to call the finish line. I am an avid runner. I am a little injured right now, so I won't get too emotional about that. But my interest for all the viewers and the listeners out there, Kim, is, I call it the finish line because I want to give them one tip or best practice from every episode I do that will help not take them across the finish line to bigger profits and, bigger days ahead, but especially when we're sitting here talking about DE&I and something so important, what is one best practice that you can share with everybody that will help take them across the finish line to change, or take them across the finish line to maybe learn something about DE&I that they hadn't even thought of before. Or it can be completely unrelated to DE&I, but I know that's your specialty. So what do you got for them?
Well, since we've been talking about autism and neurodiversity, in relation to neurodiversity, I would say a key practice would be to personalize strategies to suit an individual needs versus generalizing. So, for example, providing organizational tools that are tailored to that person, flexible working options that align with that person's unique working style. Because when we have a person with neurodiversity, there are unique working styles, and not everyone is the same, as I mentioned before. And just personalization of what's going to be a success for that individual, how we manage one person versus manage our entire team when neurodiversity is involved.
I just came up with my new t-shirt slogan, and it's going to be personalization, not generalization. So thank you for, I absolutely love that. And I think that perfectly wraps this up with a bow from this discussion. So thank you, Kim, so much. For anybody who hasn't already, Kim Lonas, she's on LinkedIn, a great person to connect with. And I can only hope to meet up with you again at a future E4. I know we have our NSM coming up in a few months, but it's always a pleasure, Kim. So thank you again.
It's great talking with you, Rob. Thanks for inviting me. I appreciate it.
I could not be more excited for this episode for a big reason, and that is our very, very special guest, who happens to also be my daughter, Samantha Voorhees. How you doing today, Sam?
I'm good. Hi, Dad.
It's always fun because I'm downstairs. I can hear you upstairs. So this is going to be an interesting episode for sure. The reason why I'm so excited for this episode, for those of you who aren't aware, April is World Autism Awareness Month, which is a cause that is super near and dear to my heart, mainly because my daughter Samantha was diagnosed on the autism spectrum at the young age of 5. And I really wanted to talk to you about that, Sam, and especially now as you did just turn 16 years old. So again, very happy sweet 16 to you. But I wanted to just have a quick conversation with you about, really not only what your childhood was like, but also what we've experienced as a family, as now you're getting older, you're getting out there into the job search and obviously getting ready for college as well. But I also wanted to touch on a really good segue here. You are wearing your Philly shirt today, which obviously is really big in our household. So go fightin' Phils. But also for all you viewers out there, you're probably noticing that both Sam and I are wearing red. And I wanted to touch on that for a second, because in years past, autism has really been attributed to the color blue. So I was all set to wear my blue today. And, we kind of switched it up last minute because there is a current movement going around right now where it's actually the color red that signifies autism awareness and support of those on the spectrum. So, wear red for autism support, I think, is the key message there. But the story I wanted to tell to kind of start things off, and why the Phillies are so symbolic, I think, to this conversation is, and Sam, you were probably too young to even remember the day that we found out about your diagnosis on the autism spectrum. And I think most fathers or most parents, when they hear a diagnosis like that, they're probably thinking, well, I'm not treating my child any different. I'm not going to, make her feel different. I'm just going to treat her like anybody else. And I will be the first to admit that was exactly how I felt. But taking you to your very first Phillies game with your sister Sydney and with Mom, certainly, I was excited for the day. We had great seats. I remember it being like 90 degrees outside. We were sitting in the outfield, And do you remember who your favorite player was at the time?
At the time, it was Mikal Franco.
Mikal Franco, third baseman for the Phillies. And do you remember what happened in his very first at bat at that game?
He hit a home run, and then for those of you that haven't been to a Phillies game, they have like a Liberty Bell, and every time someone hits a home run, the Liberty Bell goes off, and it played a really loud noise, and then I just started crying.
Essentially, yeah, that's what happened. So you think about from a dad perspective, who's also a diehard Phillies fan. Mikal Franco comes up, Samantha, huge smile on her face. She's cheering for her favorite player. The second he hits that home run, which actually landed somewhat near us in the outfield, I go ballistic, not just because of the home run, but because, oh my goodness, my daughter's favorite player hits a home run in her first ever Phillies game. The Liberty Bell's gonging back and forth, the crowd's going crazy, and I turn and look down to my left at Samantha, and she's got her hands over her ears like she is in terror. And I go into full dad mode, get her, we leave our seats for a moment just to find a quiet area to kind of walk around and get away from all the crowds. And Sam, that was the moment that I realized not that I have to treat you differently, but that I can't just ignore autism. I can't, because if you do ignore it, more of those moments are going to happen. And, oddly enough, we're going to another Phillies game next week. We've been to plenty of other Phillies games in between, this year and that year that we went. And it's okay to get out of your seats. It's okay to walk around and, go into the quiet retail store that they have, the fan shop, and, kind of digest everything that's going on and kind of get your surroundings. But I'm gonna look for this picture after this chat that we're having, because shortly after that experience at that Phillies game, I do have a picture of you with a giant smile on your face with a Phillies batting helmet eating soft serve ice cream. So I'm gonna find that, and I want all the viewers to know she was better after that whole situation and got her ice cream. So one of the things, though, Sam, that I think is so funny about what we're talking about, and obviously getting to blend it with my job, I mentioned before that you did just recently go through your first ever job interview experience. And I don't want to spoil the news here, but can you tell us how that experience went? And I think all the viewers want to know, did you get hired?
Okay, so I applied to work at my summer camp in New Jersey. And the interview process, it was actually kind of easy for me, only because I've been there long enough and I knew like all of the information, like all the questions they were going to ask me, because they actually prepare you during the summer for your interview if you decide to have one. During the interview, I did very well. I was a little nervous, obviously. But yes, I did get the job. I found out in January, so I'm super excited.
That's awesome. So for those of you, and Sam, you might know this better than I do, including this upcoming summer, how many summers is this now that you've been going to Liberty Lake Day Camp in New Jersey?
This summer is going to be my 12th, my first working.
12 summers. So that might be another photo I'm going to find of your very first summer getting ready to go there as a camper, and I'll definitely have to embarrass you and take a picture of you this year going there as an actual employee. But Sam, I know you and I kind of talked about this. I did eavesdrop a little bit when you were doing your video interview for the job, and kudos to you. I thought you handled it perfectly, and you spoke so clearly and professionally. So I could tell that you had a comfort level with the people you were interviewing with, and it obviously helped. What about Liberty Lake or any employer for that matter? Is there anything you look for as far as your comfort level goes? Like, do you, and not just from an autism standpoint, but do you look for certain things like, do I feel safe there? Do I feel comfortable? Are they Are they aware that, everybody has different needs, whether, you have a disability or, some type of different ability like autism might be? Was that something that ever crossed your mind?
Yeah, I mean, I definitely do feel safe there, obviously, because my mom actually works at camp. So it's nice to have someone there that can like help me with some stuff. And then I also what I love about my camp that's very different than other camps is that my camp has what's called an inclusion program, which is basically for any kids with any type of special needs, whether it's like autism or like something different, so they can experience a great summer.
That's awesome. And I think, we never really had this conversation. I know it came up a couple of times just at the dinner table about, you getting out there and looking for your first job as you're getting older. And we threw out ideas like working at restaurants or retail stores or something like that. But I certainly think that, Liberty Lake was probably the best choice for you because you do have that familiarity. And as you've always told us, you are very scheduled. You like things to be as organized as possible, and knowing, the employer you're going into, it is sort of that high level of comfort that, you'll probably be, as you say, nerve-sighted on your first day of work there, but you're also going to be, I think, more excited because I know this place. I know where, the restrooms are. I know where the office is. Like you're not a brand new person to that situation, which I think will help you.
Yeah.
So if you had to really peg something for an employer, and what I mean by that is, you talk about how Liberty Lake has an inclusion program, and I certainly have heard other stories about how understanding and welcoming they are to everybody from all backgrounds and walks of life. Is there any advice that you have for an employer, for a boss, so to speak? What can they do, in your opinion, to be more welcoming, be more like Liberty Lake, where people, not just on the autism spectrum, but maybe other neurodiverse backgrounds, is there anything you think they could do to make their company stand out more?
I'd basically just say treat them just as like a normal person. Like even some kids, like, or some grown-ups per se, just say hi to them. Just say hi to them. They'll be excited because, like, a lot of special needs kids don't have friends, like, that I see. So even if you just say hi to them, like, they'll be so excited to talk to you because it feels like they have an actual, like, person to talk to or, like, a friend. Like
an ally, like somebody sticking up for them. Mm-hmm. I think that's actually a really, really good point, Sam, because one of the things that I have said about the company that I work for, Exertis Almo, is that they're so vocal when it comes to not just neurodiversity, but, all forms of diversity, equity, and inclusion, that it does make people feel comfortable. It's like, oh, well, if this company is at the forefront of DE&I, I want to work there. I want to feel comfortable there. And it kind of helps get those people in, because one of the things, and I will embarrass you just for a second, but in the best way possible, as a proud dad, ever since being diagnosed at the age of 5, I have seen you be on the honor roll almost every single marking period, I think, if I'm not missing anything.
Yep.
You have been a straight A student. You just got notified recently that you can apply to be on the honor society at school. You're in the Future Teachers Club. I mean, you have so many accolades that student of the month. I know I'm forgetting probably 1,000, but the reason why I'm mentioning all these is not necessarily to embarrass you, but to really show to all you viewers out there who are involved in hiring practices that if you are not involved with DE&I in some form or facet, I can say bluntly, you will lose candidates like a Samantha in the future. because it's so important to give them the space to flourish and to really show their abilities. And I will tell you that as a parent of somebody on the autism spectrum, when my wife and I educate ourselves and we learn more about what Samantha needs and what helps her, I mean, you see it in her grades, and that is something that any employer should want to have on their team. So, Sam, compliments to you on all your hard work. And as a sophomore in high school, I'm ecstatic to see what you do to kind of head into college and your first summer as an employee. Mm-hmm. But Sam, this is the moment of the call. I am going to put you on the spot here, so I hope you're prepared. Okay.
Okay. Yeah.
As you know, what do I do nearly every morning? I go running. So all my medals behind me. The finish line is very, very important to me, because when I see the finish line of a race, I know I'm about to cross it. I'm about to get that medal, and it's just the runner's high from it. I feel great afterwards. So I call this segment the finish line. I am going to put you on the spot real quick. What is one tip or trick that you can give to potential job applicants who might be neurodiverse? What tip can you give them that might help them look for jobs, interview for jobs? What kind of tips would you have for them?
Okay, so I would say definitely prepare in advance. I mean, for my job personally, I didn't really have to prepare as much, but I still had to prepare for I asked questions, looked up information about the camp more. And then also I would write notes and ask questions, because if you do all of that, you'll make it sound like you're more interested in the job and excited for the job.
That's awesome. I think that's such a simple point, but something that even at my age, a lot of people don't do, and they kind of go in cold. And they're not set up for success that way. So Samantha, thank you very much. I do want to also thank you, because today's your day off for school, and I put you to work this morning. So yeah. You can go have your day off, have your free time. Go Phillies, by the way. I know we're pulling for Bryce Harper, so let's hope for a big game. And so, as always, everybody, thank you again for listening, for viewing. Be sure to like and subscribe to the Exertis Almo YouTube channel at this little button below, if you can see it, because you will be able to keep up with not just all of the Mind Your Business episodes, but also the rest of the EAV Power Hour. We have a lot of great content coming out. And one last Easter egg for everybody. I do have the privilege and the honor of presenting at InfoComm this year in Las Vegas. The title of my segment is Autism in AV. So really it's going to be a great, of course I'm biased, it's going to be a great session. We're going to talk about ADA compliance, Americans with Disabilities Act, and really uncover a little bit more about the hardware side and the pro AV side of autism and the acceptance around it. So I look forward to seeing everybody out in Las Vegas this year in June, and we'll see you guys next time.